He laughed like it was nothing, but she answered like she'd already decided how it would end. The wind snaps a loose board against the fence as Wyatt grips the broken post, knuckles white. Dust stings his eyes. Across from him, Lila stands still, one hand resting on the rope of a goat that shouldn't be there, watching him like she's waiting for something he hasn't said yet. The animal chews. The fence leans. Somewhere behind them, a gate creaks open, and neither of them turns. Tell me, would you have noticed her sooner? The wind came hard off the ridge that afternoon, dragging dust across the dry grass and rattling every loose board on Wyatt Turner's fence line. It was the kind of wind that made a man pull his hat down low and keep his head turned, the kind that carried grit into your teeth if you talked too much. Wyatt stood with one boot hooked on the lower rail, a coil of wire hanging loose from his hand. He had been meaning to fix that stretch for 2 weeks now, kept putting it off. Out here, things didn't complain. They just waited. That was when he saw the goat. It stood about 10 feet onto his side, chewing slow, like it had all the time in the world. White coat dusted tan from the wind, ears flicking, not a care in it. Wyatt watched it for a second, then another. "Well," he muttered, pushing his hat back just enough to see clearer, "ain't your pasture." The goat blinked at him, kept chewing. He stepped over the rail and walked toward it, boots crunching on dry earth. The animal didn't run, just shifted a little, like it was giving him room out of courtesy. That made him snort. He caught it easy, one hand around the collar, the other steady on its side. It didn't fight, just gave a soft grunt and kept working its jaw like it was finishing a thought. Wyatt tied it to a post near the fence, wrapped the rope twice so it wouldn't slip. Then he leaned back against the wood, arms crossed, waiting. Didn't take long. He heard her before he saw her. Boots on hard ground, steady, not rushed. The wind pushed the sound ahead of her, carrying it across the gap. Then she came into view over the rise. Lila Grant moved like she knew exactly where she was going. No hesitation. No scanning the land like she was unsure. Her dress was simple, sleeves rolled once at the wrist, a faded brown that matched the ground around her. A piece of cloth tied back her hair, though a few strands had already slipped loose in the wind. She didn't look at him first. She looked at the fence, walked right up to it, stopped, and ran her fingers along the top rail, testing the wood like she was checking the work of a carpenter. Then she stepped over, calm as anything, and only then did she glance at Wyatt. Her eyes didn't linger, just enough to mark him there. "That yours?" he said, nodding toward the goat. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she crouched by the post, fingers brushing the knot he'd tied, then lifted her gaze again, slow. "Maybe," she said. Her voice sat low and even, not pushed by the wind. "Or maybe it belongs wherever it decides to stand." Wyatt let out a breath through his nose, something close to a laugh, but not quite. It decided wrong. She tilted her head, studying the fence again. Not him. The fence. "Maybe your fence ain't where you think it is." The wind hit harder just then, pulling at the loose boards behind him. One of them creaked, long and tired. Wyatt looked at the line of posts, followed it out toward the creek, back again. Then he looked at her. Up close, there wasn't anything hurried about her face. No apology. No edge either. Just certain. He felt something shift in his chest. Small. Unfamiliar. He shook it off. "At this rate," he said, pushing off the post, "you'll be single forever." It came out half a joke, half not. The kind of thing a man said without thinking about why. She didn't flinch. Didn't smile right away either. She just stood there a second, hand still resting on the rope, eyes on him now, steady in a way that made the wind feel quieter than it was. Then she reached out, untied the knot with a quick pull, and lifted the goat like she'd done it 100 times before, one arm under its chest, the other steady at its back. The animal settled against her without protest. "Only until you notice me," she said, no change in her voice, no challenge in it. She turned before he could answer, stepped back over the fence, the goat tucked easy against her side, and started walking the way she'd come. Wyatt stayed where he was. The rope swung loose against the post. The wind kept moving, dragging dust along the ground, rattling the boards the same way it had before. Nothing had changed, except he was still looking at the place where she'd stood. He ran a hand along the back of his neck, then let out a short, quiet laugh. It surprised him. He hadn't done that in a while. The goat's hoof prints were still pressed into the dirt on his side of the fence, small, clear marks leading in, and now leading out. Wyatt bent, brushed one of them with his thumb, then straightened again. "Only until you notice me," he repeated under his breath. Didn't sound like a joke the second time. He turned back to the fence, picked up the wire and started fixing the line like he'd planned. But he missed the nail twice before it caught. The wind didn't change. The land didn't change. But something had shifted anyway, and he couldn't quite say what it was. The fence stood straight the next morning. Wyatt had seen to that before the sun cleared the ridge. New wire pulled tight. Posts set deeper. He even checked the southeast corner twice, pressing his boot against the base to feel for give. It held. He poured coffee into a tin cup, leaned against the porch rail, and watched the line stretch out toward the low rise where her place sat. No movement. No goats. He took a slow drink. Then he saw it. Not the goat. The mare. His gray, the one with the crooked ear, had somehow worked its way through the back gap and was standing knee-deep in Lila Grant's kitchen garden. Wyatt lowered the cup, didn't curse, didn't rush, just set the cup down and walked. The ground dipped slightly between the properties, dry creek bed cutting a shallow line through the grass. By the time he reached her side, the horse had already taken a mouthful of something green and delicate. Beans, looked like. He stepped through the open slat and took the reins, pulling the animal back slow. The mare resisted for half a second, then gave in, hooves shifting soft in the dirt. "You got poor judgment," he muttered to it. "You talking to the horse or yourself?" Wyatt turned. Lila stood near the back door, a cloth in one hand, sleeves rolled higher than yesterday. There was soil on her fingers, a smudge along her wrist. She didn't look surprised. He glanced at the rows behind him. A good stretch flattened where the horse had stepped. "I'll pay for it," he said. She didn't answer, just walked past him, straight into the garden, and crouched by the broken stems. Her fingers moved quick, checking what could be saved, straightening what hadn't been crushed completely. Wyatt stood there holding the reins. Wind moved through the dry grass behind them. A loose hinge tapped somewhere against wood. She picked up one of the broken plants, turned it in her hand, then set it aside. "No need," she said. He frowned. "No need." She rose, brushed her hands together once, not looking at him, and "It'll grow back." He watched her a second. "That ain't the point." She turned then, finally looked at him. "Seems like it is." There wasn't any edge to it, just steady. Wyatt shifted his weight. The horse snorted behind him, shaking its head like it wanted to leave. "I said I'd pay," he repeated. She stepped closer, not stopping until she stood just past his shoulder, close enough he could see the fine dust caught along the hem of her sleeve. "You fixed my north fence last month," she said. "Didn't ask for anything." "That was different." "How?" He opened his mouth, closed it again. She nodded once, like she'd expected that. Then she reached out, took the reins from his hand without asking, and looped them over the post near the garden gate. Her fingers brushed his for half a second. Not long enough to call it anything. Long enough, he noticed. She turned away first. "You can take her when you're done standing there," she said, already moving back toward the plants. Wyatt didn't move right away. He watched her bend again, hands careful now, working the soil around what was left. No fuss, no complaint. He picked up the reins, led the horse out, and closed the gate behind him. By noon, the story had reached town. It always did. Crowley leaned over the counter in her dry goods store, folding a length of fabric that didn't need folding. "Hear your horse has been doing some gardening," she said, without looking up. Wyatt set a small sack of nails on the counter. "Seems that way." She glanced at him then, eyes sharp in a way that missed very little. "Strange how often your business takes you past her place these days." He slid a coin across. "Water runs through both properties." "Mm-hmm." She didn't say more. Didn't need to. Outside, the street held its usual quiet. One wagon, a man tying off a mule near the post, dust lifting in small spirals under the sun. Wyatt stepped out, hat low again, and headed back the way he'd come. He passed the turn toward her place without slowing, made it about 20 yards, then stopped. Looked back once. The path wasn't any different than it had been yesterday. Same worn track, same dry grass along the sides. He stood there a second longer than necessary, then turned and kept walking. That evening, the wind dropped. The valley went still in that way it sometimes did just before dark. Sound carried farther when it did. Small things, a door closing, a bucket set down. Wyatt sat on his porch, coffee in hand again, boots stretched out, watching the light drain off the ridge. Across the low rise, a single lamp came on in her window. Soft, steady. He watched it without thinking about why. After a while, he set the cup down and walked out toward the fence. Didn't cross it. Just stood there. From where he was, he could hear something faint. Not words, just a line of sound. A voice carried low, like it wasn't meant for anyone else. He stayed longer than he meant to. Long enough the stars came out one by one over the ridge. Long enough that when the sound stopped, the quiet felt different. When he finally turned back, he didn't look at the fence. He looked at the place where the light still burned, and he didn't quite hurry away from it. The days didn't change much after that. Same wind, same dry stretch of land, same fence line running crooked along the edge of things that didn't belong to anyone as much as people liked to think they did. But Wyatt found himself riding slower near that rise. Not stopping. Not exactly. Just not in a hurry. By the end of the week, Hank Doyle noticed. They stood outside the feed store, a wagon half loaded with sacks of grain. Hank leaned on the wheel, watching Wyatt tie off a loose rope that didn't need tying. "You've been fixing that same knot 5 minutes now," Hank said. Wyatt didn't look up. "It's loose." "It ain't." Wyatt pulled it once more anyway, then stepped back. Hank followed his line of sight. Didn't take long. "That her place?" he asked. Wyatt picked up the reins. "We share a creek." Hank gave a short breath through his nose. Not quite a laugh. "Sure you do." Inside, Mrs. Crowley was already talking. She didn't lower her voice when Wyatt walked in. "Folks say that girl's land sits right where the ridge bends," she said, folding a receipt that didn't need folding. "Good soil for beans, if you don't mind the wind." Wyatt set his hat on the counter. "You selling something or just talking?" "Depends who's buying." He slid coins across, took his receipt, didn't read it. Outside, the sky had that pale look it got before evening. Thin light, long shadows. He didn't go straight home, didn't mean to, just found himself turning the horse toward the lower path, the one that cut close to her side before bending back toward his own. The garden was mended some, not all the way. Enough to show where hands had worked steady. She was there, kneeling near the rows, a tin bucket beside her. He didn't call out, didn't step closer, just sat in the saddle a moment longer than needed. She knew he was there. He could tell by the way her hand paused mid-motion, then kept going like nothing had changed. After a while, he nudged the horse forward. "Fence still standing?" he said. She didn't turn. "Last I checked." He stopped near the edge, not crossing over. "The mare didn't come back," he added. "Good." A beat passed. Wind moved the cloth tied at her wrist. A loose strand of hair brushed her cheek. She didn't fix it. "You always talk to people without looking at them?" he asked. Now she turned. Slow, measured. "Only when they already know what I'm going to say." He almost smiled. Almost. That night, the saloon filled early. End of the week always did that. Men came in with dust on their boots and coin in their pockets, looking for something to wash the day out of them. Wyatt sat near the far end. Not at the bar. Never liked the noise up close. Hank dropped into the chair across from him, setting down a glass with a dull thud. "You've been quiet," Hank said. Wyatt took a slow drink. "Been working." Hank leaned back, watching him the way a man watches something he's already figured out. "Working that fence again?" Wyatt didn't answer. From the bar, a voice cut through the room. "Turner?" someone called. "Hear you got yourself a neighbor keeping you busy." A few heads turned. Not all. Just enough. Wyatt didn't look up. "Go on," the man added, grin wide. "You fixing her fences now too?" Hank shifted in his seat. Not comfortable. Wyatt set the glass down. "She manages fine," he said. "Does she?" Another voice chimed in. "Thought a woman out there alone might need help." Wyatt's jaw tightened just a fraction. She didn't ask for any. Maybe she don't know better. A few laughs, low and short. Wyatt exhaled once, slow. "She ain't gonna find a husband out here anyway," he said, flat. "Not the way she runs things." It landed heavier than he meant it to. He knew it the second it left his mouth. The room didn't go silent. Just thinner. Like something had shifted under the noise. Hank didn't speak. Wyatt picked up his glass again, but didn't drink. Near the doorway, the hinge creaked. He didn't turn. Didn't need to. There was the faint sound of something set down. Soft. Deliberate. Then footsteps. Leaving. He stared at the table. Didn't move. Didn't call out. Later, when the music started up for the dance at the Grange Hall, the air felt different. Warmer. Full of sound. Fiddle strings pulled tight. Boots striking wood. Voices layered over each other until nothing stood out alone. Wyatt stood near the wall, watching. Lila stood across the room, near the edge of the crowd. Same steady way she held herself. Not tucked in, not pushed out. Just there. A young man stepped up beside her, said something, offered a hand. She glanced at it, then at him. Then, for a brief second, she looked past him, at Wyatt. He didn't move, didn't step forward, didn't say a word. The man spoke again, waiting. She took one step, not toward him, toward Wyatt. Close enough that the noise blurred around them. "Only until you notice me," she said. Same tone as before. Same quiet wait. Then she turned away. left the man standing there, walked toward the far table like nothing had been said at all. Wyatt stayed where he was. The fiddle kept playing. Boots kept moving. But the room didn't feel the same. He looked down at his hands, then back up. She didn't look at him again. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't know what to do next. The music kept going. Boots struck wood in steady rhythm. Laughter rose and fell. Someone called for another round from the far side of the hall. Wyatt didn't hear much of it. He stepped outside without saying anything to anyone. The door swung shut behind him with a dull thud, cutting the sound in half. Cold air hit his face. He stood there a moment, hat low, hands loose at his sides. The night had settled in clear and sharp. Stars stretched wide over the ridge, bright enough to cast thin shadows across the dirt. He started walking. Didn't head home right away. Took the longer road past the creek, boots scraping dry gravel, each step louder than it should have been. Only until you notice me. He said it once under his breath. Then again. It didn't sound the same now. Not like a joke. Not like something tossed off easy and forgotten. He saw it different now. The way she stood at the fence longer than needed. The way she never filled silence with empty words. The way she looked at him like she already knew the shape of what he hadn't said yet. He stopped in the middle of the road. The wind had died. The valley sat quiet. She wasn't teasing, he muttered. The thought landed clean. He stood there a long time. Then he turned and walked faster. By the time he reached the rise near her place, the light in her window was still on. That didn't surprise him. What did was the shape of the yard. The fence along the south side. Broken. Not fallen from weather. Not worn loose. Boards pulled clean away. Posts tilted where they'd been shoved offline. Wyatt slowed. A wagon stood near the edge of the property. Not hers. Too large. Wheels still fresh with dust from the lower road. Two men stood near it, talking low, and Calvin Briggs leaned against the rail like he owned the place already. Wyatt stepped through the gate without asking. The men turned. Calvin didn't. I told you, Calvin was saying, voice easy, like this was just another business matter. You've got until morning. Then I take it as agreement. Lila stood near the porch, a small crate at her feet, another by the door. Packed. She didn't look at Wyatt when he came in. Agreement to what? Wyatt said. Calvin turned then, slow, like he had all the time in the world. Turner, he said. Didn't expect you. Didn't ask, Wyatt replied. One of the men shifted, not stepping forward, just enough to show he was there. Calvin smiled thin. We're discussing land, nothing that concerns you. Wyatt looked at the broken fence, then at the crates, then at Lila. She met his gaze this time. Didn't signal, didn't ask, just held it. Looks like it does, he said. Calvin pushed off the rail, dusting his hands like he'd just finished something. She can't keep this place, Chatarishwad. Not alone, not out here. I'm offering a fair price. I'm not selling, Lila said. Her voice didn't rise, didn't shake, just sat there between them, steady as the ground. Calvin glanced at her, then back at Wyatt. Then she'll have trouble, he said. Fences don't fix themselves. Supplies don't come free. Winter's close. Wyatt stepped forward, stopping just short of the broken post. I'll fix the fence. Calvin's smile faded a fraction. That so? Wyatt nodded once. That's so. Silence stretched, the kind that made the air feel tighter. Calvin studied him, measuring something. Then he gave a short shrug. Suit yourself, he said. Morning don't change. He turned, signaled to the men, and climbed into the wagon. Wheels rolled slow at first, then picked up as they moved off toward the lower road. Dust followed them out. When it settled, the yard felt bigger, quieter. Wyatt stood there, looking at the broken line of wood. "You didn't have to do that," Lila said behind him. He didn't turn right away. "I know." "You're late," she added. That made him look back. She wasn't accusing, just stating it. He stepped closer, stopping near the porch. "I heard what I said," he said. A pause. "I shouldn't have." She didn't answer. The wind picked up again, soft this time, brushing past the boards, moving the edge of her sleeve. "I didn't need you to save me," she said. He nodded once. "I figured." She stepped down from the porch, stopping a few feet from him. "I needed to see if you would." That landed different. Not sharp, not soft, just clear. Wyatt held her gaze, didn't speak, didn't reach for anything to say. For once, he let the silence sit. Then he turned, picked up one of the fallen posts, and set it upright. "Where do you want it?" he asked. She watched him a second longer, then walked over, knelt by the line, and pressed her hand into the dirt where the hole had been. "Here," she said. He nodded, set the post, started digging. No more words passed between them for a while, just the sound of metal biting into dry earth, the scrape of wood, the steady rhythm of something being put back where it belonged. The night stretched on around them, and neither of them walked away. Morning came slow over Red Hollow Ridge. The light didn't rush. It spread quiet across the ground, touching the fence first, then the yard, then the porch where the crates still sat from the night before. Wyatt was already there. He hadn't gone home. His coat hung off one post, sleeves dark with dust. The shovel leaned against the rail, and the line of fence now stood mostly straight again, each post set deeper than before. He worked without hurry, same way he always did. Measure, set. Pack the dirt. Move to the next. Lila stepped out onto the porch with a tin cup in her hand. Steam rose faint in the cool air. She watched him a moment before coming down the steps. He didn't look up when she came close, just drove the shovel into the ground and turned the soil. She held the cup out. "Coffee," she said. He took it. Their fingers brushed again, just a second. This time neither of them pulled away too fast. He drank, then set it on the post beside him. "Calvin'll be back," she said. "I know." "You planning to stay here every night?" "No." She nodded once. He picked up the hammer, checked the line of the post he'd set, then tapped it twice. Solid. "Good," she said quietly. He moved to the next one. They worked like that for a while, passing tools without asking, holding a board steady when the other needed it. No wasted motion, no extra words. Wind moved through the ridge again, softer than before. After some time, Wyatt set the hammer down, didn't pick it back up. He stood there, hands resting on the top of the post, looking out past the fence line. "I was slow," he said. Lila didn't answer, didn't pretend she hadn't heard. He let out a breath, then turned to face her. "But I see you now." The words came plain, no decoration, no effort to make them sound like anything more than what they were. She watched him, not smiling, not frowning, just looking. He didn't fill the silence, didn't reach for more. The wind picked up a little, moving the edge of her sleeve, brushing a loose strand of hair across her cheek. She didn't fix it. "Took you long enough," she said. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a grin, close. "Yeah," he said. "It did." She stepped closer, reaching past him to pick up the hammer. Their shoulders brushed this time, not by accident. She tapped the post once, testing it. "It'll hold," she said. He nodded. They stood there a moment longer than necessary. Then she moved back, setting the hammer down, wiping her hands on her skirt. "What now?" she asked. Wyatt looked at the line of fence, then at the house, then at her. "Same as before," he said. "Only different." That earned him a small breath that might have been a laugh. "You still owe me for the beans," she said. "I paid already." "Not enough." He looked at her. "We arguing again?" She tilted her head. "Feels familiar." "Yeah," he said. "It does." The sound of a wagon came faint from the lower road. Both of them turned. Not Calvin, just a passing rig heading toward town. The dust rose and fell behind it. Wyatt glanced back at her. "You staying?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Looked at the crates by the porch, then at the fence, then back at him. "I was always staying," she said. He nodded once. Didn't make anything of it. Didn't need to. Years later, the fence line had been replaced twice over. The porch had new boards. The garden ran wider than before. Goats still wandered when they felt like it. And the arguments never stopped. About the fence. About the creek. About whether coffee was better than tea in the evening light. They sat side by side on the porch as the sun went down over Red Hollow Ridge. Older now, slower, but not quieter. "You wouldn't have married if I didn't ask," Wyatt said, looking out over the land. She didn't look at him. "You wouldn't have noticed if I didn't wait." He turned then. She was already smiling. Same way she had that first day. Wind moved soft through the grass below. The sky turned gold, then deeper. They didn't say anything else. Didn't need to. They just sat there, watching the light fade off the ridge they'd both chosen to stay on. And this time, neither of them was late. And maybe that's the part that stays with you. Not the fence, not the arguments, not even the words they kept circling around for months. It's that quiet moment when two people finally stand still long enough to see what's been there all along. If you'd been there on that ridge, with the wind moving through the grass and the light settling low across the land, you might have missed it too. It didn't look like much. No grand gesture, no raised voices, just a man setting down his tools and a woman deciding not to walk away. And maybe you've known something like that. A moment where you said less than you meant, or waited longer than you should have. A time when the right thing stood right in front of you, and you weren't ready to name it yet. Some people call that hesitation. Out here, they'd call it learning the hard way. Because love, real love, doesn't rush. It waits. It tests. It asks if you'll stand your ground when it matters, not just when it's easy. Wyatt didn't arrive early. Lila didn't ask twice, but they met in the same place in the end. And sometimes, that's enough. If you've ever had a moment like that, one you almost missed, tell me where you're listening from. I'd like to know how far stories like this travel. There are more roads like this ahead, more people finding their way back to something steady, something true. If you'd like to ride along for the next one, you know where to find me.